I'm Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and I love thrifting. Whether it's items for myself or for my various hobbies, I'm always in a thrift store and I'm always looking for good deals. So today we're going thrifting. I'm starting here at this CommunityAid. I've only been to a few of these, so I'm always interested to see how they're set up or what their pricing structure is like. I was heading for the bag wall because that's always where I start, but I got distracted because I saw some nail polish. Now, I collect nail polish, and I have spent the last year not buying any new nail polish, so I've been doing only trades or thrift store finds. And I've been really getting into vintage 90s and early 2000s polishes, and the best place to find those is the thrift store. Now, these bags were about $6 a piece, and there was maybe only one or two polishes that I was interested in, so I decided to pass on the bags themselves because they were just too expensive for the one or two items that I'd want out of the lot. Now, I always start at bags because that's mainly what I sell online or resell online, and I'm looking here for materials that stand out, for shapes that stand out, or brands and logos that I know really well or that will sell well online. And then I'm also looking for quality materials. So I'm looking for real leather, for example. I'm also looking for good brass hardware. These are the kind of things that, as I'm scanning a very chaotic wall, are things that stand out. This, for example, looks like a Coach logo bag from a faraway distance. It's not, it's a Rossetti bag, which is a brand that I don't buy. But the style on this is something that stands out in the wall, and that can kind of help you narrow down what you're looking at, and then you can go and look at the price to see if it's worth what they have on it. I'm also always feeling for materials, so I'm looking for good quality hardware, good quality leather or outside materials. This can help you determine the value of something or determine if it has a resale value to it. Hardware is a big one, so this is a cheaper hardware compared to something like this clasp, which is what you'd see on more traditional Coach bags. This item isn't Coach, but I'm looking for that kind of clasp when I'm going through the aisle and looking at all the bags. One suggestion I have is never skip a luggage wall. I found some really good bags hidden among luggage, and so it's always interesting to see what they do have in this section. This, for example, really stood out to me. This is a shoe organizer or shoe travel bag. I've actually sold one of these before. It's such an interesting shape. Something else I love to look for is sweaters, and my current favorite thing to sell online is coats. There's so many varieties of coats and materials and qualities. It's just something I've really been enjoying digging through in the winter months. As I'm looking through the coats, I'm looking for just things that stand out among the sea of beige or black coats, looking for materials that look a little bit different or just patterns themselves that stand out on the racks. Once I find a coat that I like, I will look for some sort of brand name tag, and I'll also look at the materials in that coat. If it's got a high cotton or wool composition, it's going to be a better quality coat. There are some brands that I avoid buying. They're just not worth the resale value. Fashion Nova, for example, is an online reseller. Amazon Essentials is another brand that have good enough quality things for you to wear one time, but the resale value online just isn't great. Shein, for example, is another one. It's a fast fashion company, so tags like this are ones that I typically avoid. Old Navy is another one I'm seeing a lot in thrift stores right now. They're not bad quality pieces, I own some, but they're just not having a big resale value online right now. So instead I'm looking for vintage tags like this, sewn in cloth tags with brand names that look a little bit older, and then I'm also looking for tags that have the composition on them, like 100% wool. And if you don't see the composition tag directly underneath the label or logo of the item, you can usually find it in the bottom corner. So look on the inside of your coat, and you're going to find a tag here that has the type of materials used in the piece. These can be difficult to read, but we're looking for materials that sound familiar, like wool or cashmere or cotton. That one was a bit of a bust, but the good news is about half hour down the road, there's another thrift store that I've never been to before. Again, I start in the bag section, and I'm just looking for quality or patterns that stand out to me. And when that fails, you can always look at furniture. Here's a mid-century modern chair. I loved the look of this. It was listed for $20. I did Google Lens it later, and I got quite a few things that showed up as a similar style. I just don't have the room for it right now. And again, I'm seeing some brands that I recognize and some I don't, and then Zara pops up. I see these in all my local thrift stores. It feels like a lot of my local thrift stores are turning into Zara stores. When the clothing and bags disappoint, I always check out the home goods and stationery. I found so many things in these aisles that I've used personally, like storage baskets. I'm looking for one for my nail polish collection right now. And I always pick up my paper goods secondhand at thrift stores. I've not bought new note cards in so long, and same with paper. I use this all the time at work, and I always buy it at the thrift store. Like these. These envelopes are great for pen pal letters, and I haven't bought new envelopes in a really long time. I then always check the electronics section for typewriters. That seems to be where they are in most thrift stores. I haven't seen a typewriter in a thrift store in about a year, so I was excited to see this one, but it was listed at $35, even though it had a yard sale tag that said $10 on it. And the immediate problem with this is that the carriage isn't catching. This is probably a cleaning issue, but one that for $35 I am not willing to take a chance on, so I did pass on this item. This is a new chain of thrift stores to me. I've never heard of Jubilee before, so it might be more regional. It does seem to be religiously affiliated, and I really like church-run or organization-run thrift stores. They seem to have more vintage items in them, and that's just been from my experience perusing them. So I was excited to see if they'd have more vintage items in this specific thrift store. Here's something that stood out to me. This is a Coach hardware shape. Obviously not a Coach bag, but when I'm looking through the aisles, I'm looking for shapes like this on the hardware. And in this thrift store, they have the bags in a separate section from the luggage, so I then found a separate bag wall toward the back of the store. And they have some of their more expensive priced items back here, so this bag, for example, is $20. It's not a brand I resell, even though I kind of like the shape of it. And I'm looking for styles that have brand names that sell well, or just good quality materials, or vintage things. Vintage things are another thing that I really find interesting and would like to learn more about when it comes to handbags or selling things online. Here we have a turn lock on a bag, so that is a Coach style hardware. This is not a Coach bag, but it seemed to be of good quality material, and I was interested to see what brand this was. You can find the brand of bags by opening them. A lot of them will have some sort of sewn-in label, so this is a Steve Madden bag. Here's something interesting. This is a fauch bag, or a fake Coach bag. You can see here it has what would be a traditional logo style to it, as well as a leather patch on the inside, but it's clearly not a Coach item. And here's a brand, Agner, that I sell pretty frequently. I do have another one right now though listed for sale, and it's just not selling. So when I'm deciding what to pick up or what not to pick up, the price obviously goes into that, but so does the saleability of those items. If I have something else that looks really similar, I'm not going to pick up the same thing unless I know I can sell it. I then went to coats, and these are the kind of tags that I'm looking for on vintage coats or older coats. They hold up really well, and they just look really interesting. They're also, again, made out of those more natural fibers. Those are what really stand out to me. London Fog, for example, I have sold before. I love their trench coats. So I'm looking for things that stand out, that sound familiar, or maybe that I've seen other people online purchase and resell. I thought I was done, but then I found this Coach bag for $30 at the back of the store. I just reached out to feel it, and it felt like good quality leather. I then found a creed patch on the inside as well as a hang tag. So this is a Hamptons bag. Now, this is a pretty good quality Coach bag, but the price was just out of my range, so I decided to pass on this item. It then led me to the boutique section of the store where I found a few other bags, including this Coach bag. You might recognize this. I've had this bag before. This one has the hang tags as well as an extra patch on the outside, but I was starting to question the authenticity of this bag because the inside creed just seemed off to me. The material is strange as well as the lettering of the serial number. I don't know enough about Coach bags to be able to authenticate them on the spot, but when it looks questionable, I don't even attempt to look any further. Price kept me off of this one. This is another Coach bag, but I just can't make a profit off of them at that rate, and I wouldn't be buying it for my own personal use either. Same with this Dooney & Bourke. These sell really well, but not at that price point for me. I then in the car decided to do an eBay search on that Coach Soho Hamptons bag. I really was considering it, but I wanted to see if it would sell through at that rate. So you can search on eBay by sold to see what items have sold at more recently. And this is where I was a little bit mad at myself. This bag actually sells really well on eBay, and there's a range of prices here, but at the least I would still be probably doubling my money. So this would have been a good pickup, and that's why you should do research in the store while you have the item if you're getting into resale. So I missed out on this one. I decided to stop at another Salvation Army on the way home, and I've had pretty good luck in Salvation Armies. I will say I think more recently their prices have begun to rise a little bit, but I'm always surprised at the items I find in these stores. One thing I'm always looking for is something that really stands out. So a lot of these bags might look the same, but you might get some interesting details on some of the bags. Like this one, for example, had a tapestry pattern to it, and I thought that was really cool. The quality of the leather also seemed nice enough for the bag, but at $7 I did decide to pass. If it had maybe been closer to the $4 mark, I might have picked this out and tried it. You just never know with some of these items. On to sweaters, one of my favorite sections to kind of dig through because you never know what kind of items you're going to find. I'm always looking through the tags first to see what's vintage or to look for some brands that I might recognize. After I find a brand I know, I will then look at the contents of the sweater. So I'm looking for 100% cotton, 100% wool, cashmere. So this is an LL Bean sweater, it's 100% cotton. So then the next thing I will do is check the condition. Look for any tears or stains or things missing from the item because those can hurt the resale value. For example, I bought this Irish wool sweater, which do sell well. I was really excited about it, but then I got home and realized after purchasing that it was missing a button, which impacts the resale value. This is the Goodwill in Allentown. I've bought a few things here before. I don't visit it as frequently, but I do find some good brands in here, like this Woolrich sweater, for example, which caught my eye right out of the door. I did decide to pass on this, but when I walked by the rack, maybe 5 minutes later, it was already missing. I found a Coach wallet here a few weeks ago, so I wanted to go back into the wallets and see if anything else was left behind. When I'm looking for bags, I'm looking for style and shapes that really match what I know to be Coach branded items. This bag stood out immediately because it's the same shape and general hardware that I see on Coach bags, but it is clearly not an authentic Coach bag when you look at the inside and the details. I thought it was just interesting to look at. So the hardware is clearly tarnished here, the material itself is not as good quality, and just some of the stitching here is not up to the level that a Coach bag would be, but it's always good to look for the style and those shapes. I then went to the luggage section and found this tote bag, and this is an LL Bean tote and boat bag, which if you're watching TikTok or anything going viral right now, the LL Bean bags seem to be really popular amongst resellers and people who buy things online. So I did do a Google image search on this as well to see if the pink and green one was special edition or sells better. It was $15, so that is a more expensive pickup. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting something that was going to sell well online. I did end up getting that boat and tote and taking it home.
Okay, it's the next day, and the end of that last clip, I bought that boat and tote LL Bean bag. I actually sold it about 2 hours later, so I've already run out of stock again, and I figured today we would go to one of my favorite Goodwills. So I have two favorites that I visit more frequently than anything else. The first is in Stroudsburg. It's the Stroudsburg Goodwill. I'm there maybe once or twice a week, and one of the reasons I find so much there is because I'm there so frequently, but I've had really good luck finding items there. They have a great coat section. It is small but mighty. I'm always finding things there. They also have a pretty good home goods section. I found 3 typewriters there, all for under $10. They also have a bag section, and it's a little hit or miss for me. Most of their Coach items end up in the display case up front, but I have found a few in the racks that were just great prices. I found my Barclay tote for $4.99. I can't believe I found that there. I use it every single day. And 2 weeks ago, I found a Longchamp bag, which is an expensive French brand. I found it there for $3.99. So some really good options there. I did on Black Friday find 2 Lane Acclaim pieces, which are mid-century modern furniture. I bought an end table and then a full table. They needed restored, but I had been looking for those pieces for about 5 years, so I was happy to pick them up. The end table is $14.99. The coffee table was $17.99. I put them in my office, and unfortunately, I just didn't get to them. I didn't get to restore them or work on them. It's obviously winter, so I don't have anywhere I could go outside where I could work on them. And one of the disadvantages of living in a smaller apartment is not having a workspace. So I ended up putting the end table, because there was only one of them, on Facebook Marketplace. I bought it for $14.99 and I resold it for $80, and that was with it still needing to be refinished. So I did still make a profit off of there. That Goodwill has provided for me many times. My second favorite Goodwill is this one. This is the Bethlehem Goodwill. It is off of Nazareth Pike in Pennsylvania. I'm here maybe once a week. In the summer, I'm here more frequently, a couple times a week. In the winter as well, when I'm off school. I've been here and found quite a few things. My favorite thing that I found here was a 1970s Coach bag. It was $9. I can't believe I found it. I've also found other items here. I found a Coach bucket bag in the luggage section. Lots of great sweaters. This is where I got my cashmere sweater. So I don't find things here as frequently, and it is a little bit more expensive than some of the other Goodwills I've been to, but every once in a while you find a treasure that makes you want to keep going back. So you might get fewer items, but they're things that you really are looking for. And one of those, and this was a week ago, I found a whole collection of 90s nail polish, which is a new hobby for me that I've really been enjoying, and I found it almost immediately while looking for it. So I like to come back to this Goodwill pretty frequently to look for those items. So I thought today we'd go to one of my favorites and see what they have, even though I was just here like 3 or 4 days ago. So let's go.
I'm always starting at that back bag wall, and again, I'm looking for quality or materials that stand out. New with tag items are always interesting to pick up as well, but you can see that you could have bought this bag new at Ross for $20, and now you can buy it at Goodwill for $10. The material on this was really nice, but it's a Liz Claiborne bag, which is a brand that doesn't sell as well, so that can be an indication of things you can pass on. If there's no labeling, I find it doesn't seem to sell as quickly, and if it's a brand that just doesn't seem to be really popular, it also won't sell. But I do look for things that just kind of catch my eye, and so I saw this big eggplant colored tote bag for $10. I thought this was really interesting. You never know what is going to be popular, but I wasn't really familiar with the brand, so I did do a Google Lens search to see if there was anything that popped up. There are some listings here, but nothing that is an exact match, so I then added in the brand name to see if that would pop up any specific bags that have sold on platforms. When I don't know what I'm dealing with, this is a process that I'll do to see if something is valuable or worth picking up. And the search is just kind of inconclusive, so I think I'll pass this time. One tip I have is to never skip the stationery aisle. I have found tons of paper and lots of wrapping paper. I never buy new wrapping paper. I only get it from thrift stores because you can buy it for a lot cheaper and then just use it whenever you need. This was interesting. It's a vinyl and leather repair kit. I picked up a nubuck and suede brush here the other week, so it's cool to see things related to my hobbies in thrift stores and pick those up for cheaper prices. I then also saw this Calvin Klein bag in the luggage section, so don't skip a luggage section. I did do a Google image search to see if it had any kind of value to it. I couldn't find an exact match, so I decided to pass for the $10 price tag. So in the end, the only item I left with was this little bin that I put into my nail polish storage to store my vintage nail polishes separately from the rest of my collection. So one tip I have for keeping thrifting a little bit more affordable is to look for the color sales. A lot of thrift stores will have a half off color. Some other thrift stores I've been to have a half off, a 75% off. You might not always find that same tag sale color. There's been rumors that sometimes they pull off the sale color of the week off the racks. But if you do find something that's 50% off, it might make an item more valuable to you or better to sell online when it's one of those color sales. So always check your thrift store to see if they have a half off color. When I'm looking at coats and sweaters to buy and sell online, and obviously this is more geared toward the fall and winter months, I'm looking at brands that seem familiar to me, things like St. John's Bay, which was a JCPenney's brand. Madewell's a really good quality brand as well for both jeans and tops. So I'm looking for those brands that stand out on their tags. Another thing that I'm looking at is their material content. So are they 100% wool? Are they 100% cotton? Genuine leather is another one. These are tags that kind of stand out and make a piece more quality or worth more for resale, and it'll last a lot longer. But then there's also going to be brands that you see in stores that are familiar to you, but maybe not the best quality. Things like Shein, H&M. I've seen a lot of Old Navy tags more recently in my local thrift store. When I am selling branded clothing, sweaters, or coats online, there's a few things that I do to make sure I'm picking up an item that will resell. This is kind of hit or miss for me. I've bought quite a few pieces of clothing that just haven't sold on Depop or Poshmark or eBay, and then I've bought some other things that have sold immediately, so I'm still learning this process. One of the things that I do, or at least the first thing I do, is look at the tag for some sort of brand that stands out. So brands that I know or that look a little bit more vintage than others. I know, for example, that Shein is not worth picking up in a thrift store. H&M is probably going to be pretty close to the price point it was in the original store in the thrift store. I've seen a lot of Old Navy, and while I personally have some Old Navy clothing in my collection, the newer Old Navy stuff just isn't worth picking up for resale. It just isn't going to hold up as well as some of the vintage brands. So I look for vintage tags. That's usually the first thing I do. The next thing I'll do is look at the content or material that it's made out of. I'm looking for 100% wool or 100% cotton. I actually found a cashmere sweater in one of the Goodwills more recently, and that was a really cool pickup, and you could feel the quality immediately. So as I'm going through the racks, I'm looking for quality materials, things that'll stand up really well or hold up really well, as well as those vintage tags. The next thing I'm going to do is assess the quality or the condition of that material. So for example, on this coat, it's got some worn away patches. So that's not worth picking up because it has signs of wear. Those are much harder for me to sell online. You have to denote them in all of your listings, but it also makes people feel like they don't want to spend the money on a product if you are marking it up past the thrift store price. So here's a good example of some items that I bought more recently that have sold online. I found this London Fog jacket. It is completely lined. and it's in beautiful, perfect condition, as well as being a vintage, well-known brand. London Fog is well known for their trench coats, so I thought this was a really cool pickup. I did sell this almost immediately after posting it, so that was a good pickup. Another one that I invested in more recently is this 1970s coat. This is so cool to me. It's got a beautiful fur lining and collar, as well as being completely suede on the outside. What sold me was the tags that were telling me the age of the material and also checking the condition. It's a great coat. I actually think it's a men's coat, but I love wearing it, and I do have it listed for sale right now and have had some interest. So more coats like this or materials like this are going to be what I'm looking for selling in the future. Another tip I have, at least for bag resale, is to check the luggage section. However, I have found typewriter cases in the luggage section before, so I always check these sections because you don't know what's going to pop up. I actually found a Coach bucket bag from 2004 hiding in a luggage wall, so you never know what you're going to find. Don't pass over sections just because you might not be interested in what the section is labeled as. One lesson that I am still learning is to consider the style of an item when purchasing. There's obvious items like the boat and tote that when they go viral, they are worth picking up because a lot of people are searching for that item. The boat and tote bag sold in less than 2 hours online, so clearly that was a better pickup. And in general, you'd think that brands like Fossil or Coach are good ones to pick up because they're really popular right now in the resale market. However, I've learned that the style really does matter in selling these items. This Fossil bag, for example, that I saw at the thrift store for $20 is a style that isn't super popular right now. It looks kind of dated, but I have sold other Fossil items in less than 2 hours of posting. But those are the leather-based material bags, so considering the style is a big part of what I'm learning about resale. This Coach bag, for example, is labeled as Coach, but I had the authentic version of this and it sat for months before I could sell it, and I ended up selling it at a deficit. So considering style is a big part of this. Obviously, I've made some interesting purchases that haven't sold as well. For example, I bought this Hush Puppy bag, which is completely suede, which is really in good condition for what it is. But there is no interest in this bag right now. I keep dropping the price. The style of it just isn't going to do well. Similarly, I have this beautiful 1950s blue leather bag. I bought it for $5. Who doesn't want a bag from the 1950s? The answer is Poshmark. Nobody seems to want to bite on this item. There are a few missing studs here. I thought it was in great condition for being as old as it is, but it just, style-wise, isn't something that people are wanting to pick up. Some purchases I've made more recently that I think were good ones were this Wilson's leather bag. The style here is simple, it's minimalistic, it's brown leather and brass. That will sell. So I have posted this one. I picked it up for about $7. This is a good buy for me. It might sit for a little bit, but it'll sell much quicker than some of these other more outdated looking items. Another example is this 1980s Coach mini bag. I bought this for $20 and was able to sell it in a couple days for $67. So this was a pretty good pickup for me, but the style here is minimal. It's got a great leather to it. It's in pretty good condition. So more items like this are things that I should be picking up for resale. Big bags right now, unfortunately, are not selling super well, so I have two that I picked up more recently that I just didn't think about size when buying. I personally wear mostly crossbody bags, but right now the Y2K really mini shoulder bags are selling really well, and I have the big 2008 style bags. This DNKY bag I just picked up is really large, as well as this Coach rugby bag from 2001. These are both massive bags, so they might sit around for a little bit just because I wasn't considering the style when purchasing. With all that thrifting done, let's go to a subscriber show and tell. Excuse me, Lippy, I kind of need this table. Today's subscriber show and tell comes from Matthew from Portland, Oregon, and this is his 1947 Royal KMM. Matthew submitted this one because it has a really unique set of symbols here across the number bar, including a heart, so it makes it really special in his collection. If you want to learn more about Matthew's collection, you can follow him on Instagram at The Traveling Typist. Thanks so much, Matthew. If you like content like this, there are some other videos on this YouTube channel as well as on my Instagram, just.my.typewriter. I want to thank you all so much for watching and remind you, you're just my type writer.